How's it going, everybody? This week, the local squeeze is featuring Harley Ramsey. He is a local horror writer from Burlington, Iowa, who has published a number of short stories and books, including Dead Air, House of Terror, Judgement, Demented Double Feature, and a new book on the way called Imposing on Your Slumber. He was in the Quad Cities area June 24th to 26th for Planet FunkCon, so I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get him in here for an interview as well as promote his new book. So for the interview, I'm just going to put the questions up in text and then allow him a chance to answer them. Hopefully you enjoy it.
Thank you. I'm Harley, and I write horror and all kinds of spooky stuff. It's a collection of short stories, like all the others. 6 different short stories I've written over the past couple years. They range from supernatural, psychological, to physical horror. It depends on the story. Some of them have more characters than others. With short stories, it's usually easier to write from one person's perspective, to focus on that one person rather than a whole pantheon of people. But I mean, there's quite a few. A couple of them will have a few characters in them. I think the oldest story in the book was written about 2014 or 15. Maybe actually might have been before that. So like I said, they're written over a span of quite a few years. Like almost 10 for one of the stories, and then I think the most recent one was written probably last year. Well, obviously, I wrote it to invoke fear, scare the reader. I mean, it's imposing on your slumber. I want to keep you up at night. Well, in terms of writers, the most primary influences are what I like to call the big 3: Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, and Stephen King. But there's been other writers like Robert Bloch, who's known for writing Psycho, but he wrote a bunch of other stuff. There's Harlan Ellison, John D. MacDonald, Michael Crichton. Those are mostly the main ones that have been a big influence on me. Probably the actual writing part is probably the most fun. It's always hard work at any stage, but just the actual writing that first draft down is probably the most fun, because then when you have to go back, reread what you've written, and have to edit, that's when really the really hard work begins. Oh yeah, every writer has to do that. I can't remember which writer said it, but they say to kill your darlings. So, and every writer does that. They have a line or a scene or something that they really love, but it just doesn't work for that story, so they have to cut it. And I don't completely delete it. I save it. I may use it for something else later on. That's like asking who's your favorite child. I don't know if I have really a favorite one. One of them had been professionally published in an online magazine, so maybe that one. The others have not. One's been previously self-published, and the other haven't. This is the first time I'm ever seeing publication. Well, the story is called Blue Jeep, and it is actually inspired by my own Jeep Grand Cherokee. When I got it, it had several issues with the transmission, which is detailed in the story, and it made me very paranoid and thought that the car was rejecting me in some way, like the way sometimes an organ will reject a person when they get a transplant. And so that's what the story is about. Well, if we go with just phobias, I have a little phobia of heights. But if we want to talk deeper and existentially, just the evil that sits in the heart of humanity scares me quite a bit. You know, you can write a scary story with monsters, but humans will always be the scariest monster. You see all the horrific things we do to each other in the past and now, and that'll keep you up at night. No, mostly art. Or writing is pretty much the only artistry I really focus on. So, I may do a little acting here and there, but it's not something I'm particularly, like I said, focused on. It's the writing part. That's the thing I'm most good at. I think it comes down to timing. Both of them rely heavily, especially if we're talking about physical, like the physical medium, like in movies. There's timing involved with the presentation of a joke or the presentation of a scare, and also comedy is also based on tragedy. A lot of comics have rather tragic backgrounds. They suffer from depression and all sorts of other mental ailments, or they came from a broken family or something. And horror can also deal with those items. You can either make that situation funny in some way, or you can make it horrifying. And also, if horror is done badly, then it becomes comedy. If you're doing the self-publishing route, like I am, don't publish your book with an Arial font. You can read it fine on the internet and on a screen, but in a published book, it is a pain in the ass to read. It gives me a headache, and it gives everyone else a headache. Please use a more readable font.
Like Comic Sans.
Yes. Horror works best when it's in Comic Sans. More writing. It doesn't really end. I'll be writing more short stories, and I'm completing a novel right now that I hope to send to a publishing house in the near future. But there will always be more books, more stories. I don't have anything specifically planned. I have plans for future projects that I want to promote a certain way, but this one mostly through Facebook. That's where you can find me. But yeah, the conventions and like Planet Fun Con, and later this year in October, I'll be at Halloween-a-Palooza in Ottumwa. I'm selling the book. Hopefully I'll have the book ready for that. So. Maybe, because when I write a story, it plays in my head like a movie, which can also be kind of difficult when you're trying to translate it into words. But I would imagine at least some of them could vary. I'm a very visual-oriented writer. So, yeah, they could probably translate pretty well into a television show or movie or something. If they did, more writers would be millionaires instead of, like 10% of all writers nowadays are able to make a living off their writing. 100 years ago, you used to have the Pulp magazines, And that was the cheap form of entertainment available for everyone. You go to the newsstand, you buy, Black Mask or Weird Tales or amazing. There's Astounding Short Story, then an Amazing. You could go there, and that's where you get your cheap entertainment way before television and even before radio to an extent. Particularly the American society has since probably the advent of television has not really been a very literate society. It's gone down since when the pulps disappeared, like around mid 50s. So people just don't. I don't think people read as much as they ought to. And I don't necessarily mean that you should be reading like high literature, like Dostoevsky or Albert Camus or Hemingway. I encourage that kind of reading, but it's just too easy to just flip on the television or the computer and just watch something. It's people think that reading is boring because you're just sitting there and looking at words. But to people who say that, I just say, you're reading the wrong stuff. Someone, like I said, probably not going to be able to sit through a Dostoevsky or a Tolstoy novel, but, just something like I said, go back to the pulps, just like a simple story, maybe a simple Western or sports story or an adventure story, that's just a straightforward story would probably work. Because we definitely need more readers in this country. We have seen what illiteracy has done to this, and just education in general too. People just aren't as smart as they were, if they had ever been as smart as we think they may have been. Not consciously. I have a somewhat, I hate to use the term simplistic way of writing. It's a very straightforward, somewhat Hemingway-esque way of writing. This kind of, how does he put it? The spare but true. But I also like a little purple prose in my writing, so there's a little bit of that as well. I write for me. I write the kind of stories that I would like to read. Buy my book. Buy all my books. Go to lulu.com, LULU.com, and type in Harley Ramsey, and my page or store will pop up there. They'll also be available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any other online retailer.
Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with Harley at my studio. And I'm just going to cut really quick to Harley over at Planet FunkCon. And he's just going to go through a quick synopsis of each one of his books. So go ahead and check that out.
So, Demented Double Feature. There's 2 short stories in it. One, the man kills his girlfriend and then is haunted by her ghost. Or is it just in his mind? The second is about a group of construction workers. They're working on the pipeline or the sewer system in a small Iowa town. They come across something unspeakable. House of Terror is based on the Thrasher's House of Terror, which I used to volunteer for. Each story represents one of the rooms during the 2011 floor plan. And the most recent one, Dead Air. The titular story is about a radio station under siege during a zombie apocalypse. And there are other short stories filling out the book as well, including a poem about necrophilia. And then later this year, I hope to have another short story collection called Imposing on Your Slumber. Hopefully it'll be out later this fall. And I have Venmo and Cash App. You also buy my work off of Amazon. You type in Harley Ramsey, but you have to type it into the book category. If you type it into all departments, it won't come up for some reason. And then also the company that I use to publish my books, lulu.com. You go in there, type in Harley Ramsey. It will bring up my store there, and you can buy it straight from them.
All right, well, there you have it. Thanks for watching this episode of The Local Squeeze on the Squeeze Box. I'm going to make sure and put Harley Ramsey's information down in the description. And if this is content that you like, please consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're watching us on YouTube, hitting the like button. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.